7 members are present, time being 6:05. Do you have anyone leading the pledge tonight? Yes, we do. Okay.
Before we start the pledge, I want to welcome everybody tonight. I am super excited about tonight's board meeting. Maybe it's because I've been home for the last 10 or 12 days and I haven't seen people, so like it was awesome to be back at school today. And this is the first board meeting we've had since the governor listed the 10 people restriction. And so for the last couple of meetings, we've looked out at an empty room. So this makes my heart happy. So thank you all for coming tonight. And I'm just super excited about the board meeting. And so Piper Beatty is going to kick off our board meeting tonight by leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And the flag is up here behind me, so we'll follow Piper's lead.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Piper. We do have some patrons tonight who requested to address the board to talk about the possibility of seeing if there's interest in a wrestling program in the Gravette schools and the possibility of adding that program. So Greg has taken the lead on that. I'll invite Greg to come up, and your support group can come with you or stay where they are, whatever you want to do, Greg. And Greg, when you're at the podium, you can leave your mask on or take it off, whatever you're comfortable with, but you do meet the 6-foot distance rule when you're up there.
All right. So, first off, I want to say thank you all for allowing me to be here tonight. I know that I've spoken to several of you before, but...
Greg, can I stop you for a second? Pull the mic up. There we go. That'll be much better. Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Better?
Okay.
So yeah, I know that I've spoken to a lot of you before, but my name is Greg Miller. My kids, Logan and Marley, both go to school here in the Gravette School District. I'm also a youth wrestling coach, and I'm here this evening to ask you all to consider adding a wrestling program at GHS. Wrestling is a unique sport in that it gives kids of all shapes and sizes a chance to be a competitive athlete. Whether they weigh 106 pounds or 285 pounds, the weight classes ensure a level playing field for them. So it really does open the door for kids that want to compete in a sport. There really is no other sport that I know of, especially at the high school level, that teaches discipline, nutrition, fitness, and self-reliance more than wrestling. We compete, or we train as a team together, but you compete as an individual. So there really are no excuses. Nobody to blame for a bad pass or a missed shot. You are responsible for what happens on the mat, win or lose. As a parent and a coach, it's awesome to see. Sorry, I'm getting a little nervous here. It's awesome to see the confidence and sense of accountability that these kids develop as a result of competing in the sport. Wrestling has existed in Arkansas for about 13 years now, so it is relatively new, but it's also one of the faster growing sports in the state. In this area, in the surrounding school districts, BHS, West, Rogers, Heritage, and Gentry all have between 30 and 40 kids in their programs. Gentry's program has more than tripled in size in the last 3 years, going from less than 10 kids to now they have over 30. So I really feel like it's a missed opportunity for our district to not have a sport that is growing so rapidly around us. Let's see here. I know that there have been kids that have also left this district in part because wrestling didn't exist here. And these are kids that have gone on to win multiple conference titles, state championships, but even more importantly, they were fantastic students. Let's see. One of the barriers that I know has been brought up in the past is a concern for enough participation to put together a team. And the individual nature of the sport, you really only need a handful of kids to put together a team. Now, I believe that there's no reason why we can't have 20 or 30 kids, but it's really not a barrier to not have that many. Of course, I know cost is another consideration. Your mat is going to be your biggest expense. I've talked to the Arkansas Wrestling Association down in Little Rock, and they've offered to loan us a mat for the first year as a way to kickstart the program. It's really a great opportunity that we could take advantage of. So, and then also, I know that there was some concerns in regards to coaching staff, and I can tell you, based on the coaches that I've talked to in this area, there's a lot of interest. I have people speaking to me pretty often, wanting to know, how this process is coming. And of course, I would also be more than willing to volunteer in any capacity that I can, whether that be as a coach or in a fundraising situation. So, I just want our kids to have an opportunity to experience something that I know will have a big impact on them for the rest of their lives, as it has mine and every other person I know that's competed in wrestling. It's become a cornerstone of their values and the way they approach life. If you ever have an opportunity in research, talk to somebody who wrestled. I guarantee you they will tell you it's one of the most impactful things they've ever done. And I just want our kids to have that opportunity in this district, So I have asked Chuck Mayo and Josh Burnett to come this evening. Both of their kids wrestled in our youth program. And I don't know if you guys want to come up and talk or.
Greg, while he's coming, may I ask a question, and I should know the answer to this? What is the season? What is the high school wrestling season?
It starts usually in early November and runs through, depending on the year, it runs through February usually.
Okay.
So like, I think the state tournament this year is going to be in a couple of weeks. They got pushed back for, I don't know if it was a COVID concern
Okay.
or whatever. But, so yeah, it's one of the things that I'm really encouraged about this year is that even under, of course, wrestling, there's absolutely no way to social distance or really, we try and protect ourselves as much as possible, but even under these circumstances, the growth that I've seen in some of these programs is crazy. Roger Heritage has, I think he started the season with 54 kids on his team, and I think he said now he's got 47. So it's pretty encouraging to me that even under these circumstances that they're growing like this. So anyway, I'll get out of the way here so you can.
I didn't hear you back there. Is it okay to take me?
Yes, you may.
Oh, thank goodness. But I don't have to. So I just want to thank everybody for the opportunity and appreciate the chance to get to visit tonight about possibly adding a wrestling program to Gravette Athletics. A few I know, about half of you up there, but Tim, I've kind of known you through the 4-H and the fair. But my name's Chuck Mayo. My wife and I, Megan, Have 4 kids. We've been in the Gravette School District for 9 years now. 2 oldest daughters have graduated from Gravette, and they currently have 2 boys that are attending Gravette High School. About 2 years ago, my youngest, Jake Mayo, decided to stop playing basketball. I was never good at basketball, as you can tell. I don't have a height and a gravity problem, so basketball was never our thing, but, I just like to keep him active. So he had come to me and said that he wanted to try wrestling, so we had sought out the Bentonville Wrestling Club, and he spent that 8th grade year of off-season doing club wrestling. And just, I have to admit, the personal growth that I saw in Jake during that off-season was more than, what I have seen throughout, any school or athletics that he's played. I don't know if any of y'all know Jake, but when you see Jake, people think he's about 2 grades, younger than what he actually is. He's a freshman, and when you look out there, it's easy to spot because you go across there and then you have a drop, and that's Jake, and then they come back up. So, so one of the things about, about wrestling is, like Greg said, anybody can wrestle. Body type, weight, really isn't a determining factor. But there's a set, and I wrote them down, and I apologize. I'm not good at going back and forth. So, but there was a set of, life skills that I thought Jake picked up during that, short 3 months that we were there. Self-confidence was one thing. When you wrestle, especially when you're Jake and most of the kids have been wrestling since they're 4 and 5. He comes in as an 8th grader to competitions. Some of these kids are ranked in the state. They're quicker, faster. You got to have some self-confidence in yourself to go out there and compete. And obviously, the first match, I think the first serious match we went to at Bentonville, he wrestled a kid from Oklahoma, and it was one of those things I didn't think I was ever going to get my wife to go back and watch again. The kid picked him up, threw him down on his head, and that match was over with in about 30 seconds. He was pinned. But as I went through, he wrestled kids 2 and 3 times throughout that season, and went from getting beat to maybe having a draw to actually at the end of the season winning a couple of those matches. So did a great deal for his self-confidence, just building him up. Discipline was another one. We always talk about sports and kids needing discipline. Wrestling was a good avenue for discipline for Jake because it's you. It's all that one kid. You're going to get out of what you put into it. So wrestling developed a strong work ethic for practice, a training schedule, and then maintaining a weight goal. I mean, you want to maintain a certain weight. So some weeks you didn't get to eat, or you had to cut back what you're eating. You had to do a little bit more exercise. But it's just that discipline. Get up every morning before he's going to school, and he's going to the bathroom to step on the scale to see what he weighs, because he knows in a couple nights he's got to weigh in, and that's got to be turned in. A couple, 2 or 3 pounds in wrestling makes a big difference. So you don't want to get thrown up there against somebody that weighs about 5 pounds, more than you do. So, it created that discipline. The third thing was mental toughness. You have to develop mental toughness if you're going to wrestle. A lot of times it's you against somebody else, but a lot of the times it's you're battling yourself. It's what you can put up with, what you can. You got a big kid that's been wrestling for years. He's laying on top of you, getting ready to pin you, and you got a choice to make. You can either lay there and let him pin you, or you can fight and battle and try to get out of it. So, and I think that goes a long way for someone like Jake to build that kind of mental toughness, to feel that he belongs, he deserves to be there. So that was one thing. Competitiveness. Every time you step out there, you want to compete. So that's another thing that I think it helped develop in Jake. One of the things that I really didn't think about, looking at through stuff, but was self-defense. I really didn't put them together, but, you learn to wrestle, you learn different ways to gain leverage, how to escape holds, how to put holds on. Obviously a life skill that none of us really want to talk about in here, but it was definitely something that Jake can take with him as a self-defense if he ever needs it. Wrapping up, I realize, coming before you all tonight and making this request that it's tough to do because it's a financial and an administrative commitment on the part of the school district. And, I promise I don't do that lightly. Coming from where I work now down at the university, managing housing dorms and dining halls, the time that we're in now, kids aren't living on campus, so it's tight. So, I don't take it lightly to come before you all and ask to add a program knowing that there is a commitment to the school district. One thing I can promise you, I will be there to support. I spent the last 6 years in the Booster Club, kind of went up through the ranks. So I've spent, the last 6 years running concession stand, doing different things to raise money for all sports programs. Obviously, just with everybody, it's been tough this last year and a half trying to raise that money. But, my commitment to this group here is if we decided to move forward with this, is that you could see me out there raising money for the program, volunteering for the program, being there to help build that up. One other thing I've done over the past 2 seasons has worked with football staff doing a team breakfast for each week for the football team during the season. So that's been a lot of fun too. You just get the camaraderie with the coaches and the kids, building those relationships. So just wrap up. I just appreciate the time tonight to come before you all, have you all listen. I appreciate what you all do as a school board, the teachers and the administration. So go Lions.
Thank you.
Hey, Chuck,
Yes, sir.
if you don't mind saying, I'm curious, what weight class does Jake wrestle in?
Well, when he wrestled, he started out at 102, and he wasn't able to keep that. That would have been a good weight for Jake to stay in, because if he stayed in that class, he was usually one of the bigger kids, if you can imagine Jake being one of the bigger kids in a class. But he started getting hungry doing all the wrestling practice. It takes quite a bit out of him, and he started eating a few more cheeseburgers and Little Debbie's and not listening that, hey, you need to watch what you're eating. And he jumped up to, I think, 107 to 108 towards the end, and he was wrestling in a 110 weight class. And, like I said, from 102 to 110, that was a big difference for Jake. But, he always dreaded that when he stepped on there and he was 106 or 107 because he knew he was wrestling in 110. So, but he enjoyed the heck out of it. It was a good 3 months for him.
Greg, I know you've been before us before. I'm trying to remember. I don't think money was the issue.
No, it seems like it seems like the bigger concern was in the whether or not there'd be enough interest from the students, and I can tell you that I because I am who I am, I made a Gravette wrestling T-shirt. I think you'll probably see me wear it at some of the basketball games and stuff. And of course, I'm going around recruiting kids, because my kids are in, school here. So I was trying to recruit kids to
What
come to our
grades are
wrestling
your kids
club.
in?
Huh?
What grades?
Logan's in 8th and Marley's in 5th, and they both wrestle. And Marley finished 4th and 3rd at the last couple of state.
So we got a foundation anyway.
Yeah, and she's wrestling boys, but at the high school level, they actually, Arkansas is one of the first, one of the front runners in the country actually, to have girls wrestling that's a separate entity. So the way they usually do it is the girls and the boys usually practice together unless you have enough girls to separate them out. But then they compete in tournaments in girls against girls. So I think Arkansas was like the 17th state in the country to set that up that way. And so it's actually girls wrestling is exploding. I think ever since the last Olympics, we had a couple of girls that won gold medals there, and it kind of launched that.
I know that Hope would love to see another sport we can beat Gentry in, so.
Yeah. Well, so it's funny. I talked to the Gentry coach. He's a nice guy from Illinois. I was just kind of I talked to a lot of the coaches in the area to kind of find out what kind of numbers they had and kind of pick their brain on what costs would be, like real world costs. I mean, I know what this stuff costs, but there's some variables involved with the high school aspect of it that I don't know. I don't have access to. But their program is taking off. I think he said he had 28 boys and like 5 girls. Bentonville High School, I think they have like 15 or 16 girls and like 35 boys. I know those are bigger districts, but the point I'm trying to make is that this area, wrestling is blowing up. And of course, Bentonville has won like, I think 4 state titles in a row, and West has gotten second the last 3 years. And so this area has kind of become sort of the hotbed between us and Little Rock. It's that's something I'm pretty passionate about. And, my kids, of course, I'm pretty heartbroken, and I know my son's pretty heartbroken at the idea of not being able to wrestle next year. He's wrestled for 5 years. This year, our kids didn't compete in tournaments. We made that decision because we were having to wrestle in Missouri. Arkansas wasn't allowing youth tournaments to happen. And we'd go to some of these tournaments, and they had people traveling from all over the country. Now, they still practice. I still went to the tournaments and coached. But that showed me the level of commitment and how much they enjoyed the sport based on the fact that it's a really, really tough sport. It's grueling. It's a grind. And they were going to these practices and working their tails off, and without the payoff. They weren't getting to go to tournaments. There wasn't any payoff involved with that. So it's one of those things that kind of gets in your blood, and you learn to enjoy that grind of the sport. So.
Thank you, Greg.
Yeah.
Thank you for the letter, too, that
Yeah.
we received in our packet as well. Is there any other questions from anyone or comments?
I mean, I can, at some point, if y'all need, I can put together numbers and stuff like that. I've like I said, I've discussed with a lot of the coaches in the area, and, I have a pretty good idea. I've got some relationships with some wrestling apparel companies and things like that, too, so.
And I guess one of the hurdles is if you hire a wrestling coach, what do you do with him the other 6 hours of the day? Is that fair to say? Generally something we always have to think about is how do we balance the coaches in the classrooms and what we need for that? And I'm sure our admins looked at that, but I know that's a hurdle. At least something that has to be addressed. It'd be nice if we could just hire the coach, but I don't know how you get around what you do with the other 6 hours. And I think another thing that we have to consider, and I'm saying all of this, I want to lead with the fact that my husband's a huge wrestling fan, and his cousin went to OSU and wrestled, and so, I have a respect for that.
Yep.
But there's also folks that want to see soccer
Yep.
as well. That's a pretty big push within the community too. So I know that that's things that we're having to balance. And I don't think it's anyone's lack of desire of wanting to offer things for kids. we'd all love to offer everything we could for them, everyone's, desire, but trying to figure out how to do that, and for Coach Mitchell and Ms. Childress and them to figure out how to balance what we have to do with the classroom and the coaches and then those other needs out there. But I love your passion. I admire so much that you come back and you keep fighting for that. And so I'm hopeful that we can figure out a way to figure some of this stuff out, whether it's wrestling or soccer or something else, because I know there's a real desire out there in the communities for it. But
Yeah, in regards to the coaches, most of the coaches that I've spoken to, they're all teachers. So it's not, they don't just coach wrestling. And like I said, if that truly is something that we have a hard time making happen, like I said, I would be more than willing to get my registered volunteer certificate and do whatever we need to do to make it happen. I'm self-employed, so I have the flexibility. I got a lot of time to come back and bother you guys. If there's one thing you'll learn about wrestlers is persistence and tenacity.
that's great. We need more of that.
Yeah. So, but does anybody have any other questions or anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. We'll move on to.
Yes. Hey, I want to welcome Mr. Jeff Davis and our friends from Lions Club to come forward. And Piper, you can start heading this direction as well. Piper Beatty, who is a Gravette Middle School student that led our pledge, is receiving some recognition tonight from our Gravette Lions Club.
Seems odd to be standing in front of a school board again. 40 years ago, I was interviewed for my position as a teacher, and your dad was on the school board at the time. So it's come full circle here. But tonight I'm in a little different capacity. I am president of our local Lions Club, and every year for the last 30 years or plus, the Lions Club has sponsored an international peace poster contest, open to middle school kids. The first contest winner was Mustafa El Tawaki from Lebanon. So it is totally international. This year our theme was Peace Through Service. And I'm really honored that our winner, Piper Beatty, did an excellent poster. She really did a nice job. It's not only shows her artistic ability, but also that she understands what service totally is.
Absolutely.
And not only did she win our first place in Gravette, but her poster went on to district and took second place.
Wow.
So she's really, really a talented young lady. And she has an award for her first place winner here and one for her second place. We got a frame. You can choose which one you want to frame. We also got her a gift certificate to Hobby Lobby and a art set, watercolors.
Cool.
We're just so proud of you. And I hope that one day in the future you will remember this and come join us.
Yes. Way to go.
The second place winner was Kinsey Burrow, and then we had honorable mentions, Keegan McGee, Yarley Camacho, Mallory Wright, J.C. Keller, Brantley Jones, Cammie Gardner, and Trevor Blevins. And we would like to thank the high school, or the middle school art teacher, Ms. Colby Kesterton, for her cooperation. She was just really supportive and helpful. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Cameron.
And thank you, Jennifer and Doug Beatty and Tristan Beatty, for coming and celebrating with us tonight, too. We appreciate it. All right, we are ready to move to the consent agenda.
We have the plaques that you want.
Oh, we're not ready to move the consent agenda. I skipped B.
Can't do that.
We can't do that. So yes, I have this letter that came from Kathy Ivy, and it says the enclosed awards were presented to our board members at the ASBA Annual State Conference. The Arkansas School Boards Association appreciates the dedication of Jody Moore and Jay Oliphant and would like for them to know they are appreciated, especially during these most difficult times we are all facing. So want to congratulate Jody and Jay for their Master Board Member Awards. That means they earned at least 50 hours of professional development in boardsmanship. So, thank you, congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we will now get to our consent agenda. We have the minutes of the January 18th regular school board meeting in that, and then the financial report and the bond refinance update. Dennis.
Reviewing the financial results for January 2021, period 7, were 58% through the year. Now, current month, January, we received about 1.4 million in local taxes, bringing that number to 7.3 million to date. Moving on down, we did receive almost 3,800 in student road fund. You can see that my attempt to budget for that was a little off, so I'll be digging in those numbers, trying to reconcile that and see where either I was off or the state. We received an Arkansas Game Fish grant for $2,500. And then 21st Century. If you'll look, the budgeted revenue for that went way up to $227,000. That was from guidance with the state. As you guys are probably aware, from time to time, I may not agree with some things that the state puts out, but that's just me. Not sure if they're having some issues with how they account for that, but they told us to include all the carryover amounts with the current year award, whether or not that was going to be spent. So we appeased them, hence the $227,000. Obviously, there's no way that we can spend that in a year, even in a full year of utilization in a year 1 and 2 when we received $150,000. The way it's structured, the most we were able to spend was about $100,000. Next is we have a new governor's COVID emergency relief fund. That's Fund 6774. It shows zero. We received a check for that today for $30,000. That's for wages reimbursement for those on leave due to COVID-19. There was a similar fund, 6776, of which we received $126,000. We received $53,212 in revenue from the ESSER 1 fund. And we've only begun to expend COVID-related expenditures under ESSER 2. Total revenues for the month, a little over $2 million, almost $12 million to date. And you'll notice that our budget is now over $22 million in revenues. Questions on the revenue side? Okay, moving to page 2. Our expenses are in line. We know the building fund was a little front-loaded. To date, 55% expenditures and we're 58% through the year. So I think we're looking pretty good right now. For the last several months, we've talked about custodian, facilities, transportation, and technology, how they were a little inflated. You see those numbers coming back in line now. Did move some expenses related to Daniel to some of those CARES Act or ESSER 1 funds to help moderate that. Utilities look good at the end of January, 42%. I'm sure that will probably bump up after this unfortunately only lasted a week. So I'd say at this point, the district finances are looking pretty good, 7 months through the year. No other surprises. I'd like to point out the balance sheet. We still have $809,000 in money market fund at the bank of Gravette. They're also holding some residual bond interest and escrow proceeds at $46,000. Keep talking about sweeping that to the general funds to make bond payments, but I'd like these last 2 refis, those interest amounts to clear, so we'll only have to do that one time. So hopefully next year on that. Mr. Beardsley's here to give you guys the recap on the 2 issues.
That was your cue, Scott. You may not have heard him.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yes.
Dennis has a nice, quiet voice.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be back with you tonight. I've got 2 items for your consideration. As you recall from back in January, the board gave permission to look at refunding 2 bond issues, and both of them were successful, so I'd like to take you through the bids and the savings, answer any questions you have. The first one I have is $1,275,000. Originally, the board approved $1,280,000, but the winning bid included a little bit of cash, and so we downsized the bond issue. The district received 4 bids. The lowest bid was from SynCap at $1.255. The second place was from Stevens at $1.2688, then Raymond James at $1.284, and First Tennessee at $1.299. The winning interest rate means that the school district will save $129,879.47 over the life of the bond issue, which is 8.235% less than you're currently obligated to pay. The bond issue is scheduled to close on March 4th. Under transfer of funds spells out the wire transfers to pay off the old bond issue. You start paying it back on June 1st of this year. And then the final motion is at the bottom of page 1. Included in your packet is just a note to Dennis about accounting for the accrued interest. And then your new debt schedule is on page 3. The savings certificate is page 4. That again points out you save $129,897. Page 5 is the debt service comparison. So the bulk of the savings will occur on June 1st of this year. You already have the June 1st payment in your budget, but it will come in $58,929 less than you have budgeted, and that's what we call the savings, is the difference in your budgeted payment and your actual payment. The rest of the savings are really inconsequential for the rest of the bond. They were all pushed forward to give you that immediate savings. And then there's some fun IRS regulations for the last 2 pages, which you guys are in compliance with. Any questions on the first bond issue of $1,275,000 with $129,000 in savings?
No questions?
No, not for me.
All right, then the motion is at the bottom of page 1.
We have this listed as
And
under
consent,
consent.
yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
keep going.
All right,
Yep.
sorry. The second one will follow the similar payout, or the similar format. It's for $1,510,000. It was originally $1,520,000 is what the board approved, but it was downsized by $10,000 due to the cash that the winning bidder provided. Same winning bidder, but there were 5 bids this time, and the winning bid was 1.246. And then the other bids are listed there. Dropping down to the next to last paragraph, the district will save $224,906 over the life of the bond issue. And flipping back again to page number 5, the savings are primarily in the first 3 years. The first savings will be this school year for $66,174. Next school year, $72,287. And in 3 years, $21,362. In the rest of the life of the bond, it's less than $5,000 per year. That savings of $224,000 represents a decrease in payments of 11.5% over the life of the bond issue. Again, the motion, which is in your consent agenda, is at the bottom of page 1. I would be glad to answer any questions on the second bond issue.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Scott.
Last piece of information I would pass on is sometimes it's good to be lucky. It really didn't have anything to do with me, but just the timing of when your board met and when we put the bids out. Thursday, Friday, and today, the bond market interest rates have gone up based on just some information that's coming out about COVID and about the potential pass of the third stimulus package. And so just glad that we were able to get the rate locked in. This may be a blip in the radar, we never know, or it may be finally where interest rates are going up, but both of your refundings are already locked in, and you'll be closing in March.
Yeah.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, Scott. But don't we need to have a motion separate from the consent agenda on this?
Do we need to? Is that what you're saying?
I think we
If we just read this motion before we vote on the consent agenda, Scott, that will satisfy? Or do we need to separate that?
It was in
Okay,
the consent agenda for last month.
yeah.
Yeah,
But we pulled it out and voted on it separately.
Oh, yes, this is true.
All right. We can leave it, it's just. I got you. Yep. All right.
Also, in the consent agenda, our food service recommendations, and I just wanted, ordinarily, by the time the board approves the food service recommendations, they've already cleared their background check, but there's a delay right now in background checks. And so I just wanted to make sure the board knew that approving these would be, they wouldn't be given a contract until they had passed the background check. But Sheila and I are okay with them going ahead to start as subs because they have been working in districts and we are confident that we will get that. But it wouldn't be official until we got those background checks.
All right. Very good. Any questions? And then we have an expulsion. Two.
Yes. Student number 5 and student number 6.
Oh, yes, I see that.
Yes.
Sorry. All right.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion on the floor. Second.
Second.
Thank you, Jay.
I just have a question, Maribel. The 5 and 6 are different from the hearing today.
The hearing today was for student number 5. Student number 6 is a high school student that was not appealing.
Okay. So Robin, you'll reflect that we already acted on number 5.
Yes.
An expulsion hearing.
I will add that into the,
Yeah, that.
yes.
All right, so in the consent agenda, we have the minutes from our last regular board meeting, which was January the 18th. We have the financial report. We have the 2 bond issues. We have the 2 food service recommendations, and we have the expulsion recommendations. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed 7-0. All right, superintendent report. Okay.
See if I can play this game.
Thank you, Scott. You're free to leave.
No, it doesn't seem very loud tonight, does it?
No, it doesn't.
We may have to work on that because I know you all can't hear a thing. Okay. Hopefully people at home can Here.
Yep.
So for Superintendent Report, the first thing on our agenda tonight is the winter STAR test data that you have. In your packet, you have school level data. I also have notebooks for each of you when you leave tonight that will give you classroom teacher level data, because I know you also like to keep zeroing in to make sure that not just as a district and as schools that we're growing, but that all of our classrooms, all of our teachers are showing growth, so you have that data. The principals are prepared to come up and visit with you tonight and talk to you about how they use this data and other data in their schools to help improve student achievement, how they're using this data to prepare for the final STAR assessment for this school year that will come at the end of the year, and then also how they use data to prepare for ACT Aspire and ACT Test, which are coming up. So I know you've had a little bit of time to look at their data, but I'll let them come up and visit with you about how they're using this information. Who wants to go first? Looks like, okay. So as Shannon comes, I'm going to tell you that I have learned just today that there are some flaws in the way that Renaissance calculates data for 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. Kim Brunkhart has had multiple conversations with Renaissance, and they are working on those metrics to make some changes. So her high school data is still absolutely positively very valuable to teachers in terms of what individual students do and do not know in helping the teachers close gaps. But in terms of any charts and graphs where it talks about who's ready and who's exceeding, there's a problem in the way that's being calculated right now. And Gravette High School is doing much better than what it looks like on those charts or graphs for some reason. Ordinarily on the STAR test, and it works this way for grades 2-8, that if you hit about the 50th percentile on STAR, you're predicted to be ready or exceeding on ACT Aspire. For some reason right now, the way the calculations are running for 9th and 10th graders, it's calculating that somewhere in the 80s. And so there are a whole bunch of students that are ready and exceeding that aren't currently showing up on the way that it's calculated. So, okay.
All right. Okay. Thank you for kind of clarifying that. So after looking at our fall math scores, our math department was in shock because they use other assessments to kind of gauge where students are going, and so Ms. Brunkhart was kind enough to come in and sit down with them, and then that's when they figured out that there was the mistake in the cut scores. And like she said, normally 50th percentile, and it was 83% with our 9th and 10th graders, and I think even for our juniors in reading. So while I think they have the same, okay. If we kind of just don't look at that reading proficiency score and focus on the growth that students achieved, that's what we focus on. And our teachers in all areas. So with math and language arts, or with math and reading, we do STAR. Several weeks ago now, I've lost track after with all the weather days, we proctored ACT Aspire interims. And so that's being used by math, reading, English, and science. And then math also uses Delta Math and USA Test Prep to kind of gauge where students are. So all of those tools, they're able to look department-wide, okay, in this specific subject, where are we strong, where are we weak? And and that's what we get with the combined data. And then we're able to take individual student data, and each content area goes over individual test scores with students. Like the other buildings, we want students to be responsible for their data, and so they can take ownership, and this is where I'm at, and this is what I can do to do better and achieve higher scores as far as readiness. So within the math department, like I said, we proctored an ACT and then the ACT Aspire interims. We kind of had a whole test day, 9 through 11 tested at the same time. And they've broken students up not only in ability levels, but also in, like, each math teacher on our Win Wednesday has taken a content area, and students rotate every 30 minutes through like algebra, geometry, statistics, probability, and so they can work on all those areas. And then they're also doing test-taking skills. The ACT, luckily the state has allowed us to back that data up. So instead of testing tomorrow, our juniors will be testing March 9th. Once we get our juniors tested, we'll start doing that same kind of rotation with our 9th and 10th graders to prepare them for the ACT Aspire. The Delta Math actually, when a student works a problem, if they miss it, it explains what they got wrong.